To the ACS Queensland or ACS webinar with Professor Ryan Coe today. Thank you all for coming in from around the world and mostly around Australia. And thank you, Ryan, for coming in today. My name's Kylie. I'm the Events Manager and Membership Manager for ACS in Queensland. And like I said, this webinar is going out across the country. So before we start today, can I just request that everyone turns their microphones off and put them into mute? And also, I'll introduce Ryan. So again, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
So Ryan is a Professor, Chair and Director of UQ Cybersecurity at the University of Queensland in Australia. Until January 2019, he was the Associate Professor and Director of the New Zealand Institute for Security and Crime Science at the University of Waikato. Is that right? How to pronounce it? Waikato. He established New Zealand's first master's degree in cybersecurity and Cybersecurity Lab. He also advises Interpol, New Zealand's Minister for Communications, a Cybersecurity Skills Task Force, and Ministry of Justice. His research interests are cybersecurity, data provenance, homomorphic encryption, and cloud computing security. He has a track record in tech commercialization as ex-leader computer scientist with HP Labs and currently as principal investigator of Stratus, a 6-year NZD 12.12 million MBIE grant researching user-centric cloud security technologies. Wow, that's a mouthful. He serves as director and board member to public and private sector organizations as well. He is a recipient of the ISC2 Information Security Leadership Award and Cloud Security Alliance Run-Node Service Award. He is active as research advisor he is active in research as advisor for the CSA Asia Pacific and serves as chair and board member of several cybersecurity industry consortia chapters. All right, so that's a lot to retain there, and we're really privileged to have you on today, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time, and please take this opportunity to ask any questions you have of him.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I just want to check if we have any audio issues, because there was a person who just typed in that they can't hear the audio. So
yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah.
If you can't hear the audio, can you test your audio down the bottom left hand of your screen, just to make sure that your end's working? We're all fine on our end and Ryan's end, so if you could check your end, that would be really great. This will be recorded too. Just letting you know.
So if you can, just, a few of the kind participants, if you can hear us well, just say, all good, or we can hear you, so that we can, have the assurance. Yep. Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, cool.
Great.
So I'm just going to begin, and I thank you for your time. I know I appreciate this is lunchtime for some of you, and it's a privilege to be here just to share a little bit of my experience. I have not really done this much, so bear with me. I call this a PowerPoint karaoke, So a little bit about myself. I think I've been introduced well enough, so I'm just going to quickly go through this slide. So basically, I have some experience writing curriculum, and I have experience advising ministers, governments, and some of the organizations in the crafting of cybersecurity qualifications across academia and also in the industry. So I hope that I can share some of the experience with you. Okay, and a little bit about my employer. So just one slide on it. UQ, actually, the reason why I was attracted to joining UQ to lead its cybersecurity program is because it's a combination of 3 important factors in learning the industry, where if you're familiar with AusCert, AusCert was formed in 1992 and has about 500 corporate members. They provide some so-called real-world experience for us, so that we can, the researchers on the other side and the teachers on the other side, at the other side of the university, can give value in terms of the courses and the kind of degrees that we offer. So one of the interesting thing that I guess is probably to your interest is that we launched an interdisciplinary Master of Cybersecurity, which takes in if you have any bachelor's degree, if you have a degree in writing or music, you are also welcome to take part in that. I wouldn't go too much into the details, but you can go and check out the website. But what's interesting is we are able to do that because it's a university-wide program that combines the skill sets of the arts and social science, computer science, business, criminology, and so on and so forth, and OSCE as well. So this is what we see as a kind of the future, and this is kind of my third try of writing a degree program in cybersecurity, and I think this is something that is exciting and will address the needs of the society. So I'm going to share some experiences from my past and present, and I want to credit all these organizations for providing me with the chance to actually learn these experiences. I just want to start with a question, right? When you think about the cybersecurity jobs, what type of jobs do you think of? There's a few of you. Immediately there will be some. Oh, wow, that's good. There's some people who would. Let me see. Yep. You just feel free to type in the chat, and I think we would see system administrator, enterprise security, and many other. But there are more variety than the list. So yes, pen testing, GRC, and so on. Yeah, this is fantastic. Yeah. So I want to bust some stereotypes. This is a photograph of my team when I was in New Zealand at Waikato University. So the first stereotype I want to bust is the concept of hoodies. Every cybersecurity professional wear a hoodie. I'm not wearing a hoodie now. And in fact, recently there was like a competition for the PR agencies to create new kind of advertising on cybersecurity without hoodies. So our Master of Cybersecurity program, I basically ban hoodie images. Yeah, I think that presents something that's linked to this thing. So ethical hacking. I'm not sure how, and I might step on a few toes as I say this, but I have an issue with these two words because they are kind of like an oxymoron. And to put it into perspective, right? Is there such a thing as an ethical burglary? So this is something that I would think that it's good for people to know the idea of what some parts of cybersecurity is doing, but at the same time, it presents a negative connotation to the profession. So I would like to point to the other disciplines and professions that possibly could say there's no such thing as an ethical plane crashing. There's no such thing as an ethical fraud person. When we train pilots and auditors and accountants. So to quote the words from my mentor, Professor Corey Scow in Idaho State University, he used the example of training pilots and training them to fly really well so that they can land all the time without crashing. Right? I think that's the mindset that we should take from the cybersecurity training point of view. There are a few people who actually listed cybersecurity as a risk. Right? This is, as people mentioned, GRC, and a few in the chat room talked about risk assessment. Exactly. But more so, and in an increasing fashion, we are starting to see cybersecurity as part of the national security conversation as well. So this brings in other expertise like policy advisors, or even political science experts, and many, many more. I'm going to give you an example of this great friend of mine, Mrs. Sai Honig. So she's originally from the United States. Now she served and finished her term as the ISC Squared board. ISC Squared is one of the top professional bodies for cybersecurity. It's kind of like the equivalent of the ACCA or the Chartered Professional Accountants to the accountants, as it is for us in the cybersecurity job and career area. So she moved to New Zealand, and before that, she was also very active in volunteering. You know, when one looks at her or when one looks at myself, you know, you wouldn't think of us as a cybersecurity professional. But she used to work in the aircraft manufacturing, and she basically does rocket science, you know. So and she moved into the cybersecurity profession because she has a passion of helping people. And she went on, you know, we went on to write books, and now she's an advocate for women in cybersecurity as well. So I respect her a lot. She's you know, she calls herself a multi-potentialite. I think that's a great description of her, and she's also very autodidactic. You know, she learns things by herself, and that kind of sums up the mindset of a cybersecurity professional who's successful. Now, when we look at different stories online and around the world, you know, you see here 3 examples of cyber attacks that are very global, and you know, the attackers don't even have to visit the countries to actually perpetuate the attacks. But when we look at all these things, very few people actually look into the actual jobs that are involved in this. And given that this talk is about careers, I want to cover a few of the jobs that will probably, you know, have been in touch with these case studies. So when you see these news items, what type of jobs come to mind? Well, I can say that there are more than 10 or even close to 20 different roles as listed here. I'm not going to name all of them, but there are some interesting ones like diplomats, you know, policy advisors, even cryptanalysis work, you know, code breaking, the police, psychologists, and the lawyers, and so on, criminology. So that's quite a lot, right? And how can we expect, say, a typical degree or something to cover? Because there's no one-size-fits-all thing. And that's why I'm beginning my talk in this kind of mindset, right? So for example, the top 2 will be political science and humanities. And then we need a team of different individuals. Another group of individuals, you know, for example, the bank heist and a few other examples in high-profile cyber attacks. You know, you require some form of a business angle. There's an emerging field in cyber insurance, so you also need some actuarial science knowledge. You need some physics and mathematics knowledge. You need some computer science, which is something that everyone knows. What's interesting is how do you communicate the incident, right? How do you communicate it to the public, to your customers, and you know, to the government and so on. So you need some skills in communications, psychology, law, criminology, and there are many researchers, you know, for example, the Stuxnet was discovered by researchers who are looking into malware research. They look for patterns, and then they got to see the uranium enrichment graph, which was similar to the Stuxnet malware pattern. So, you know, things like that, right? So on and so forth. But the focus of today, and I guess most of us, since this is an Australian Computer Society platform, we will focus on the technical cybersecurity career. There is this kind of myth, or rather there's a saying in the industry that I would like to also debunk or dispel. There's talk about, you know, they say that cybersecurity, oh, you don't need any degrees to do that. You know, you can just learn it by yourself. Yes, as with everything, you know, we can learn everything by ourselves. But the truth is, when we look at the market and the stats that is in the industry, about 84% of the jobs that are posted are looking for degree holders, bachelor's and master's and above. There is, of course, a 16% demand in the non-degree qualifications. But as you look to the column on the right, you start to see this landscape of, you know, the industry looking for unicorns. So like, you have to have a degree, but you also have to have some experience. So this is a kind of a catch-22 situation for many of my undergraduates now. You know, how can I have experience when I've been studying all my life? You know, or how can I have experience in the field that I'm trying to go to, right? So this is a struggle. So I think one of the key thing to do with regards to experience, it shouldn't be measured by number of years, but I guess by number of achievements. So when we are studying, I would encourage people to, go into community events, competitions, and hopefully winning them, or at least have an attempt to do that, or working for some organizations, which I'll cover later. Now, of course, when you talk about careers, it is not a surprise that cybersecurity careers are one of the highest paying jobs in the world. And this is actually, in US dollars. And you can see that the salaries of these jobs are quite high. So I don't have to really sell to you. And the reason why you're here and you're curious, right, is because of, I think partly because of this as well. I have many students who have graduated and moved on to really good jobs. And then there's, on the other side of the spectrum, right, we also have a kind of industry trend or hearsay that says that, oh, there are people who are paid millions, right, to do this. Yes, there are. In fact, I knew of a couple of people who are really paid millions, but they are really, really, really good. And I think they are the 0.001% of the society. But what's the key thing is, what about the so-called the everyday people, the everyday jobs, right, which form the bulk of the market? And this is what this talk is about, right? I hope that amongst some of you, there will be that, multi-million dollar making cybersecurity professional. But I also hope that most of you, or in fact all of you, will have a successful career. So things to consider, and this is probably the most important slide in the entire webinar or PowerPoint karaoke that I'm doing. Right. The first thing that you want to do, right, as with everything, is to think about your goal and then you work backwards, right? So first, of course, we all need to know our purpose in life. I wouldn't cover that. I mean, this is something for you to basically cover by yourself, because, for example, Cy's purpose in life is to help people. My own purpose in life is to also to help people to start programs that will help more people and leave a legacy. What is your desired cybersecurity job outcome? What's the area that really interests you? Is it in writing? Is it in penetration testing? The relevant qualifications that actually comes across, and required. And the environment for learning, the facilities for learning, whether you can find mentors. You have to find a mentor. I've been mentored by many people, and I still get mentored by many people. My colleagues in the university, some more senior professors are mentoring me, and at the same time, I'm hoping to pass forward to other people. And the ecosystem, beyond your organization, the state or the nation, and so on. I think one thing that we need to also consider is that in this cybersecurity profession, the brand and the reputation is of utmost importance. Because if your brand and reputation is strong, then people trust you and you get a lot more opportunities. The training institution quality and focus on quality is very important. The focus on continuous development, a continuous learning process is also extremely important. As I mentioned just now, you could also be trying to score some wins and milestones in your career so that you bridge the experience factor, even though you haven't really graduated or finished your qualification. And of course, once you have so-called made it, right, you would want to try to see if you can help others, right? There are many parts of the society which actually requires a lot of cybersecurity expertise, not-for-profits, schools, disadvantaged sectors of the society, and can you mentor someone, right? I'm going to focus on each different sections with examples so that you won't fall asleep. But the working backwards part, I'm going to start with this thing called the NICE framework. This is interesting because about close to 20 years ago in the United States at the National Institute for Science and Technology, NIST, they created the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, NICE framework, which was distilled by interviewing about close to 20,000 professionals across the entire country of America. And in this whole thing, they distilled out the different functions of the cybersecurity job. I would say that this is quite linked to the technical side, but it is not exactly fully technical because there are some areas. For example, there's another area, domain that is called investigate, which is not in this diagram. That requires a bit of non-technical thinking and lateral thinking as well. And when you look at all these different roles, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, you can actually see the different jobs that were listed in the chat room just now, right? So it's quite interesting. I would encourage you, in the interest of time, I wouldn't be covering this, but I would encourage you to go and Google for this or search for this. And when you are searching for this, you will probably be overwhelmed by the gigantic spreadsheet that they have on the website, right? Now, this is something that my team and I, when we were designing our master's degree at UQ, we actually consumed this entire spreadsheet, and we mapped every of our course to the NICE framework. So we were proud to say that our entire degree is all aligned to this. And what I mean by aligning, so if you look at this picture here, this is a Department of Homeland Security website where they have this search. And in this example, I'm typing in the word forensics, and you will see different K numbers and the different S numbers. The K numbers are, knowledge, and S are skills, and so on. So, and A is abilities. So when I type forensics, I was able to find different work roles. Now, if you're exploring this career, this is a fantastic site because it actually points to you what is the work role ID, work role, description of the work role, the category, and the specialty areas. And if you click on the specialty areas, you'll be able to find the specific knowledge requirements of this area. So I think this is a great resource, which probably not so well known to the people outside the field, but I think this is something that we can start. Now, if you like, you compare to the search bar just now, there is something much more interactive, and this is a website called CyberSeek. Now, for example, if you're interested in looking at a career is not a job. You have to look at what is after and what is before. So this is a great visualization, although it's slightly US-centric, but it gives a good illustration of what we can and cannot do. The CyberSeek website also gives kind of the qualifications, job titles that are synonyms of each other, and so on. Then there is this question, right? Oh no, how do I do a career? Can I even start as a high school student? Yes, you can actually. So when I was running the New Zealand Cybersecurity Challenge, we had 11-year-olds coming in to trash some of the more senior people, right? But that doesn't mean that they still need a bit of guidance, but it means that from a technical or skills perspective, they might be more qualified than some people. That said, I have loosely classified this into 3 areas. I call that high school, TAFE, vocational institutes, and university, without actually naming any of these institutions. I would say that if I look in Australia, if you're a high school student and you're curious about this subject, you should try something called the Australian Computing Academy, which is started by the University of Sydney. They have this thing called the Schools Cybersecurity Challenges, which is funded by a project funded by AusCyber, the Growth Network for Australia for cybersecurity. I think this is a great program. I recently attended a kind of a launch at the Queensland high schools, and I could see that many of the digital technology people and also the different high school students and the teachers actually benefit a lot from that. Now, moving on, you could also, people don't really learn by just sitting in a lecture nowadays. They also do online learning. But what's interesting is there are more and more, competitions mushrooming out right now. You can easily find online and in-person capture the flag competitions, and you can just have a try. It doesn't matter if you fail the first time. You just have to keep, gaining experience. That's also part of clocking the experience. And then you move on to the vocational institutes. There is a certificate in cybersecurity. There are many, many more certificates that you can consider. So please have a look. And then at the university level, I guess it doesn't really matter which bachelor's degree, but in a technical sense, the computer science, computer engineering, IT, and software engineering degrees tend to give people an advantage and a head start when they move on to postgraduate degrees. There are different types of postgraduate degrees. We have the postgrad cert, which is about 6 months. It introduces somebody from another field or another discipline into this field. The postgrad diploma, which is a 1 year, typically a 1 year or 1.5 year degree, depending on the pace you take. And also the masters by coursework and capstone, which is industry placement. So some people are looking for degrees which place them into an internship that provides them kind of an opportunity to prove themselves to future employers. And of course, there is also research in MPhil and PhDs. This is the part that, this is another diagram which I kind of very, very loosely created to summarize some of the landscape. I guess this is also part of the reason why this whole cybersecurity job landscape is confusing. I want to put a disclaimer out here. This disclaimer is that there are too many qualifications out there, and I can't simply squeeze everything into the slide. So I'm just giving you some examples that I commonly hear about in the industry from prospective employers. So there are 3 stages of kind of skill sets or 3 groups of people. The first group of people are the ones with no existing IT skills, right? I guess the best thing for them to do is to look at online courses or sign up for different cybersecurity courses, even from vendors and so on. Now, if you're a veteran, you're actually very blessed because in Australia we have an organization, a company called With You With Me, which actually trains veterans, and also more recently, return to work moms can be trained in this area as well. Now, in the middle category, these are the 2 main groups and the bulk of the people who are kind of lost in all these 4-letter, 5-letter acronyms of qualifications. These are the guys with IT skills looking to convert into cybersecurity, or those with existing skills looking to specialize. There are so many different types of specializations and skill sets. But I would say that, if I think about systems, I tend to hear more about the IC squared SSCP and the CompTIA Security Plus qualifications. For cloud computing security, I tend to hear about the CCSP, which I had the privilege to write, its first version, and its common body of knowledge. And also the CCSK from the Cloud Security Alliance. For pen testing, the offensive security certified professional tends to be quite a well sought after employer. Employers tend to look for these people because these guys have gone through 24 hours exam in pen testing and defending systems and so on. So they have proven that they are able to survive, right? Yeah, and in healthcare, and audit and digital forensics, you have a range of different things. I think lesser known to the public is that the police, for example, tend to, if you want a career in police, especially in digital forensics, you will surely get a job if you go into this. You would want to consider getting certified as a certified computer examiner who can look into the hard disk, look at the memory sectors, and trace back, or even look at logs, to trace back crime. And then we have the CREST approved certification, which is kind of an they would position themselves as an elite penetration testing, but the price range is also slightly of the more elite range. So people tend to go for, with budget constraints, we tend to go for alternatives such as the OSCP. And then we have the SENS Institute, which is a very renowned institute which covers all these very specialized skill sets. And usually people who attend it are actually sponsored by their companies, mainly because of the cost as well. And if you are looking to move into management, there are currently two predominant options. One is the CISSP and then the CISM. I had a look at many of the Chief Information Security Officers, and these are the two main qualifications they have. If I don't list them here, it doesn't mean that they are bad. Yeah, but one thing that we need to look for is that, we're all putting in some investment, right, of our time, money, and, time away from family and so on. We want the best value for money, right? I guess the answer to this question, what is the best value for money, is basically the one that enhances your reputation. So if you look at employer perception, for example, like I mentioned, the OSCP, because I know some security consulting companies who really loves to hire OSCP folks, and when they test them, you could tell that the person has survived the 24-hour exam. And in the US, you also find the CISSP as an entry requirement for many of the federal jobs, especially those in management. You also want to see the quality control, or how do they regulate the common body of knowledge, CBK, and whether the content is actually refreshed regularly, right? So for example, in ISACA and ISC Squared, the organizations running some of the qualifications I mentioned, they have this process of renewal every 3 to 4 years, where they get representative professionals from all over the world to come together to go through at least 12 or to 15 different cycles of planning. What does this professional qualification look like? What is the graduate outcome of this? And it is refreshed quite commonly. So since the time I wrote the CCSP, for example, they have been refreshed once, and now they're going for the second refresh. The other important thing is the proctoring of the exams, right? You wouldn't want to associate yourself with, organizations which possibly could run exam fraud. There's also an organization which sells qualifications, and if you have done your very best to do the examination and pass them, but there is another person at the site, who paid $15 in an overseas country and then have the same 3-letter word behind the name, that person is going to really destroy your reputation. Yeah, so you have to be very careful with what you associate with. I'm putting this example of the certified ethical hacker here because there is this perception in New Zealand, for example, where when I spoke to the employers and I said, okay, this is the list of the things that we are putting our students through. Which one is the one that you will hire and which one you wouldn't? I was surprised to hear that the certified ethical hackers were not preferred because of this, this occurrence or this incident where people were actually buying CEH for $15 in South Asia. So this actually creates kind of a reputation risk for the people associated with this qualification as well. You also want to see organizations which run the exams properly. For example, hiring people like Pearson VUE to run the exams so that the exams are, you can tell that the person who took the exam actually is the person. Yeah. And then I'm going to go into environment factors. I think the key to growing a career is actually to the human touch, right? I model myself and my own approach of how I teach and how I research to many of my mentors who have come, into my life, and I still consult them once in a while. I strongly recommend you to join the local meetings of the ACS or ASA, Australian Information Security Association. Find your local branch, go and make friends, right? There's an emerging group which is called Cyber Sentry Mentoring, started by my friend Mandy Turner and her friend Lana Tosic in New Zealand. So watch this space as well. They're trying to create this mentorship network. And then when you talk about environment, you talk about facilities, you would want to go into an institution which can offer, things like this. In this picture, I was visiting Singapore, and in Temasek Polytechnic, one of the TAFEs there was kind enough to host me and Linda from the New Zealand government, and then we actually went inside and take a look at how they teach. So you will see that the student standing in front, right, in the front with her back facing us, she's actually role-playing the role of the Security Operations Center manager. And then the next few rows are the triage, and then the analyst, and so on. And then behind the glass windows with lots of stickers at the back of this picture, are the actual IT services staff who will be the mentors for these people. So this, I felt it was a great living laboratory kind of setup, which I want to share with you. If you're looking at a place to learn from, I would definitely jump at a chance of learning in such a place. And I want to ask about, in terms of environment, do you know this guy, Loki Hart, right? So he, his name is Jung-hoon Lee, from Seoul, from Korea. Usually he goes for, he has a talent for looking for vulnerabilities, and because of that, he's able to earn quite a good income from that as well, and win a lot of competitions, right? But his success is not just because of his talent, but I would like to argue that it's also because of his environment. Like, for example, in the SecCon competition in Tokyo, where I was visiting them and I witnessed them in action, the PsyCore team, which the group that trains Loki Hart and a few other people, was actually trashing the rest of the team, right? You look at the points, there's about 1,000 point difference. And when you look deeper, right, you actually look at an ecosystem concerted effort, right, to lift the entire country or the state into a higher cybersecurity skills, right? So what's amazing about this is they actually, in about 4 or 5 years of the program, this is called the Best of the Best program. As the name says it sounds like it's a Hunger Games style, cybersecurity competition. It is, right? So different talents from around the country, they come together and they compete, and there's elimination rounds, and then the best of the best would emerge, and the top few would actually get scholarships or job offers and so on. Now, what's also amazing is the teams actually won the top prize in the DEF CON Capture the Flag competition, and in such a short time, right? So the environment is really important, right? I mean, if you're placed in such an environment every day, you will surely strive to succeed. And this is a snapshot of some of the things that they do and the exciting stuff that they have at their premises. So I look at them, they have this few elements of success, right? The investment mindset, to the resources, the student-centered strategy, internationally benchmarked, right? They want their students to be successful worldwide, and a true integration of teaching, research, and operations and extracurricular activities. This is another example where I'm working with in 2014, I started the New Zealand Cybersecurity Challenge, and over time, it's become a competition run by students, for students. And this is a picture of the team. The person holding the mic on the left is a person from the industry. He mentors some of these people here. And if you look at the screen behind the TV screen, this is a collaboration we have with the Japanese NICT. And you know, it is an ecosystem kind of environment. And in the ecosystem, you will see different kind of great news, right? Like, for example, Tim and Halsey here, they managed to win this Pwn-to-Drone competition at OSCE conference. And over here, you see the example of our competitive squad, the UQ Cyber Squad, winning the best written submission and overall third prize in the Cyber 912 competition in Canberra. So the Cyber 912 is a policy advice competition, which, you know, you not just have to know the technical, but you also have to know the entire political landscape and the geopolitics to be able to do well. The best team is usually the West Point guys from the States. So it is our goal to hopefully win them next year. Right. Now, I'm going to very quickly go through the next two factors, right? One is about brand and the other one is about passing it forward. One thing that really stands out, right, for ISACA and IC Squared as examples, there are many other organizations, is the way they treat the profession. They treat it just like how doctors, accountants, and engineers treat their professions, right? So every year, the people with these qualifications, you know, you look at like CISSP or CISM and so on, they have to clock, you know, different CPE hours, continuing professional education hours. You know, they have to be updated with the what's going on in the industry, attend talks, reading a book, going to different conferences, doing online training that's certified by them, and so on. It's not difficult to clock this, but they just want to see that you are continuing to improve yourself. I think this is a mark of a good qualification. An institution reputation is also pretty important. Just giving one example, there are many institutions which have gotten on the news because they were hacked, and at the same time, they are also training in cybersecurity. This is an example of the EC Council's website, which was hacked a few times, and you know, each time the hackers up the ante a little bit, yeah, and that also has some implications onto the graduates of their organization. Passing it forward, right? I think there's a lot of value in creating different campaigns. So once you learn something, one of the professional experience you can do is perhaps maybe help your own company or help your local organization create a cyber awareness campaign. This is one of the best way to learn because you actually get questions from people who are new to cybersecurity and you are there to teach them and you're there to promote it. So being a teacher will deepen your knowledge as well. I'm going to give you a few examples as well about people who really pass it forward. Mandy Turner, as I mentioned just now, she's to me one of the top-notch cybersecurity professionals. We are very blessed to have her as a security operations center here at UQ after many years of her serving in the government. So here is Mandy receiving an award. I think is well deserved, and I hope that some of you here in this talk will also be like Mandy. And then over here we have one of my ex-students from Waikato. We still keep in touch, and he's now doing his PhD. But as you can see from this picture, he's a grandpa. You know, he has grandchildren. He started doing cybersecurity at the age of 50-something, right? So, and he hasn't given up, and now he's doing his PhD. Now, what's interesting about paying it forward is when he's doing his research, together we actually went back to his home country of Tonga and actually helped the government to improve their cybersecurity posture. And this is Craig Schoon, and a very successful senior consultant in Deloitte right now. You know, here he is with my team. We were presenting to the previous New Zealand Governor General. Craig's Schoon's story is very unique as well. He spent about 10 years as a McDonald's manager, and one day after working for 10 years in the food and beverage industry, he felt that he just wanted to do something more, still hands-on, but something much more, in line with his newfound passion of computers. So he went to study a degree, and then he eventually became a Master of Cybersecurity at University of Waikato, and now he's a senior consultant. Now, why senior consultant? He got promoted 3 times in Deloitte in 1.5 years. So I guess, I credit it mostly to his McDonald's training, his focus on quality, processes, and so on, and management skills. Here are some resources to get you started. If there is another set of slides from this talk that you can take away, and which we will share later as well on the website, it will be, you can go and try and click on the CyberSec website. And you can also click on some of this useful reading about the NICE framework and so on. But closer to home in Australia, you can also sign up for this thing called the ASD CyberEXP. ASD CyberEXP actually helps you to simulate the experience of a cybersecurity professional from the ASD point of view. There are a few components which you can try. It's kind of like a game. You go and do a few trips, take on different roles. You have, different roles and mentors. For example, you have the intrusion analyst, you have the pen tester, incident responder, and so on. And it's kind of like a mission-driven kind of platform. It's quite fun. I've tried it myself. And, you get to go through this experience and you actually learn about, oh, this is the needs and these are the nature, and you get to see whether you like the job or not, right? So this is fantastic. Teachers can also be trained. So if you're interested for more information, you can contact ASD or myself or anyone who's involved with this ASD CyberEXP program. It's run around, not just at UQ, but around most universities in Australia, and hopefully around the region as well. So I want to acknowledge many people, right? Firstly, I want to acknowledge God, and I also want to acknowledge all those people who have invited me from the ACS, Kylie and Holly. Thank you very much for inviting me. And also some of the grants which, propelled some of our research work, and many mentors and colleagues. So I thank you for your kind attention and for bearing with this PowerPoint karaoke. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just unmuting myself and putting my camera back on. Thank you so much, Ryan. So much opportunity there. I'll wrap that up in a minute. But before we do, I think we'll just go back through the chat questions that have come through in the Q&As.
Yep, I'm looking at them. Yep.
Yeah, we'll just bear with us for a minute while we just scan through them and answer as many as we can. So Did you want to pick one up, Ryan?
Yeah, so the first one that I see is how can we get a job in cybersecurity without any previous experience? I would say that there is work experience, as in gainful employment, and then there's technical experience. What the employers are mostly looking for, and they're open to people who have no work experience. So for example, I had a PhD student who had lots of experience in working on projects for both the Ministry of Justice and also with, on and off different security, small little pen testing projects. So he got the attention, and he won some competitions as well. So he got the attention of one of the security consulting companies, which say, okay, you're welcome to interview us. You're welcome to be interviewed, and here's the test. And he passed the test, and then he got hired, and he got a 6-figure salary job offer, and then he gave up on his PhD, which is, I was sad, but at the same time I was happy for him. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. So try to get involved in the societies, the organizations, try to get some projects, volunteer. Yeah, that'll be fantastic.
The next one down, I look. A small company may purchase a cybersecurity product instead of hiring somebody to set the security policy. So what is minimum size of business need a cybersecurity person?
So which question were you?
Oh, it's just underneath. How can we get a job in cybersecurity without previous experience? Just one under that.
Okay. So it's by Rohit Lamba. So we have this. How do you figure out the current market requirements? The best way to do is to go out of the room, join the organizations that are available like ACS, and so on. Go for the free talks and hang around after the speaker speaks, chat with them, without being too confrontational. Just be relaxed and just chat with them and say, could you give me advice on, or do you know somebody who can, who's in this area that I'm living at, that I could have a coffee chat, offer to buy a coffee or tea for that person, and maybe 30 minutes of their time. I think that makes a lot of difference. Or join an organization or institution which basically has kind of a cohort experience, like student groups and so on. Yeah.
Did you want to pick another one?
Yeah.
There's lots to get through. This is awesome. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. Entry level, right? So I see two. I think I can answer the two questions in one. So what are the entry level roles, right? So usually I've seen two types, right? One is I've seen people, they are quite clever because they actually go for the system administrator roles in less in-demand organizations, or less competition in some of those jobs. For example, I've seen some students who actually intentionally apply for some of the jobs in the not so highly populated cities around Australia and New Zealand, and they get the experience there for a couple of years, and then they move up. Yeah, they move up to another role. And during the time when they are working in those roles in other regions, they actually build their skill sets and experience. So they really beefed up their CV so much, and some stayed and some moved on. So this is one of the ways. And the other one is if you're looking at entry-level roles, you can look for internships. For example, the Big Four auditing firms, the Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Ernst & Young. These organizations, they have, a very large internship program which takes in different batches every year. There's only, the only thing you should try, and the only thing, they can say is no, but just keep trying. There are different internships as well. There's another way to also get some internships is through qualifications, like some of the degrees offer some placements, capstones, or internships. Those degrees could also give you an entry-level role if you prove your skills and your enthusiasm. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Is there any chance to get a job in cybersecurity as an international student?
Yes, definitely.
Or without citizenship?
In cybersecurity jobs, right? I would say it depends, right? I mean, if you are working for the federal government, of course, it requires you to have citizenship. There are also some jobs which don't require any citizenship requirements, so that's quite easily answered. With regards to international students, I believe that international students actually have an advantage. You bring another worldview into the job, and you can actually see how maybe some of the attacks are forming, and you can actually spot some of the different approaches. So having a bit of diversity is always welcome. I always strive for a very diverse team. So if the organization does not welcome any international people and they are not a government, then maybe you should not be considering them, or you have a very hard time, you know.
Absolutely. Right there in front of your face, isn't it? Okay, so there is another question here. What would be a basic certificate you would suggest for someone who is having basic IT skills but not cybersecurity skills?
Basic certificate. So if you are interested in the extreme value for money, the highest is of course the CISSP or the CISM. By going through the course and the training, you will be able to learn a lot of the perspectives of the information security from these two providers or these two certifications. I would strongly encourage you to look for official training providers of ISACA and ISC Squared. Never look at the providers who give you a very cheap price, but you don't know what is the quality control there. Buyer beware, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the message there is to try to upskill as much as you can in cyber. If you have the
absolutely, yeah. But I can't endorse that. What I say is the absolute golden truth. Different jobs have different demands. Like for example, when I was giving the example of the OSCP just now, the Offensive Security Certified Professional, the OSCP is graduates of that qualification tend to get very high-paying penetration testing jobs.
Wonderful. Okay, so we might need to wrap up there. Just one more question though. There's most job vacancies look for unicorn, but as fresh graduates, we lack those. How do we break those barriers? I'm not sure what he means by unicorn. Do you understand that?
Because I mentioned the unicorn thing about companies wanting to hire people with 10 years experience, but the technology only lasts for 2 years.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
They only emerged in the last 2 years. So that's a unicorn person that they are looking for. And it's very common, you get to see this in the job market. The HR departments have to improve on that. But for us, right, the best thing to do is to get into the networks, get into the industry, because people don't know your worth on the piece of PDF, CV. They know you when they see your face, and that's why when I was approached by ACS to give this talk, I was very happy because I can reach out to people who are and in fact, if you're on this call or on this webinar, you are already in touch with the ACS and all its mechanisms. So I will encourage you to use that to network with other professionals.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Ryan. And just a couple of takeaways. There's so many opportunities out there, different areas to get certification, different places to get your skills upgraded, so many pathways you can choose from. And I guess it just comes down to what you want to do with your career and which way you want to go, and just delve deep into that. Just a couple of things to wrap up. ACS also have cybersecurity certification as well, so look into that. And also, we have one more event for the year, which is our Christmas party. So if you're in Brisbane, come on in. Ryan, you're obviously invited.
Yep.
I'm sent you an invite. I've got to check that. It's on the 12th of December here at RCL at 5 o'clock. So I hope that you can make it, those who live in Brisbane, obviously. So once again, thank you so much, Ryan. And this has been recorded and it will be put up on our YouTube. And I'll also send out a link to the YouTube channel and also the presentation that Ryan's provided today. So once again, thank you, Ryan, and hope to see you again soon. And thanks everybody for coming in. Ciao.
Thank you.